Welcome to Fountain of Hope. Here, we explore faith together and seek the true answers to life. Today, we continue our series, Biblical Figures, the truth behind the stories. Through real lives and true struggles, we go deeper into the Bible and encounter the God who is still at work in our lives today. Sometimes, the greatest pressure in life isn't blazing a new trail, but picking up a burden someone else couldn't finish. You might find yourself suddenly placed in a role you didn't choose, stepping in to lead a team while doubting your ability, carrying on your family's responsibilities, afraid to disappoint, or following in the footsteps of a legend, wondering if you could ever fill their shoes. Your heart races. Your mind is full of questions. Am I really capable? Do I have what it takes to finish what they started? What if I fail? Will I let everyone down? The hardest part often isn't the size of the task, but the feeling that you're unworthy to even be in that position. You want to run, you want to hide, because deep down, you're afraid your weakness will ruin everything others have worked so hard to build. You'd rather stay in the shadows than carry the crushing weight of expectations. In the Bible, there was a man who faced this very same pressure. He was once Moses' assistant, standing in the shadow of a giant, watching as Moses led Israel out of Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, and received the law from God. But then Moses died, and suddenly God's voice came. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you must rise up and lead these people across the Jordan into the land I have promised." He froze. Take over for Moses? Face towering cities, powerful enemies, and the expectations of 6 million people? His name was Joshua, a man who went from servant to leader, and in the weight of succession, chose to take a step of faith, a step that led Israel into victory. Today, we'll dive into the book of Joshua and discover his story. Joshua's story began in the shadow of a giant. He was once Moses' assistant, following the great leader for 40 years. He witnessed the Red Sea split in two, saw the 10 Commandments descend on Mount Sinai, and watched the people of Israel walk from slavery into freedom. But then Moses died, and God's call thundered down upon Joshua. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you must rise up and lead these people across the Jordan, into the land I am giving them." Joshua froze. Take over for Moses, the prophet who raised his staff at the sea, who spoke with God face to face. He was just an assistant. Now, 6 million people were looking to him. The towering walls of Canaan, the strength of enemy armies, all weighed on him like stones. He stood by the Jordan River, waves crashing, and a quiet cry echoed in his heart. "God, am I really able to do this?" But God answered with power. "Be strong and courageous. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you." Joshua clenched his fists. He chose to take the first step. He gathered the people and declared, "Prepare yourselves. In 3 days, we will cross the river." Joshua knew Canaan was no empty land. The walls of Jericho loomed tall, and their enemies were fierce and ruthless. He needed insight, so he sent 2 spies to secretly enter Jericho under the cover of night. The spies made their way into the city. They found shelter in the home of a woman named Rahab. She was a foreigner, a woman of low status, yet she had heard of Israel's God, of the dry path through the Red Sea, and Egypt's downfall. But danger followed closely. The king of Jericho heard about the spies, and soldiers came searching, right to Rahab's door. Without hesitation, Rahab hid the spies under bundles of flax on her roof. She told the soldiers, "They've already left the city." She risked her life to protect the messengers of God. Later that night, she spoke to the spies. "I know that the Lord has given this land to you. Swear to me that when the time comes, you will spare my family." The spies agreed. They told her to tie a scarlet cord to her window, a sign of the promise. Before dawn, the spies climbed down the red cord and escaped back to Joshua's camp. They brought good news. The people of Jericho are terrified of us. God has already given us the land. Joshua stood once again by the Jordan. The wind rustled the tents, and he remembered God's words. I will be with you. Rahab's faith, a small flickering light, ignited something in Joshua's heart. If a foreign woman could trust in God's power, how could he, Moses' successor, not take the next step? The waters of the Jordan still raged. But Joshua knew God's plan was already unfolding on the other side of the river. Joshua stood by the Jordan River. The waters roared before him, and the land of Canaan lay shrouded in morning mist on the far side. 6 million people stood ready to march, their eyes fixed on him, as if asking silently, "Can you truly take Moses' place?" His heart pounded. Moses had raised his staff at the Red Sea, and God had split the waters. Could such a miracle happen again? Joshua took a deep breath, recalling God's promise. Be strong and courageous. I will be with you. He summoned the priests and commanded them to carry the Ark of the Covenant, the golden chest symbolizing God's presence, to the front of the procession. Then he turned to the people and declared, "Get ready, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." The priests stepped into the Jordan. The river raged around their feet, and in the quiet of his heart, Joshua whispered, "Lord, will you act this time?" But he chose obedience. He let the priest's footsteps become the first step of faith. Then the miracle happened. As soon as the priest's feet touched the water, the rushing river halted. The upstream water piled up in a heap, and the downstream flow dried up, revealing the riverbed. 6 million Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. Children's laughter echoed through the wilderness on the other side. Joshua commanded 12 stones to be taken from the riverbed and set up as a memorial, a sign of God's presence. But an even greater challenge lay ahead. Jericho, a mighty fortress of Canaan. Its walls soared high. Its gates were sealed shut. God said to Joshua, "I have delivered Jericho into your hands." But the battle plan was unexpected. Have the priests carry the ark. Let 7 trumpets sound. Have the people march around the city once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, march 7 times. Then shout together with all your might. Joshua was stunned. No swords, no siege, just marching and shouting. But he didn't argue. He obeyed. For 6 days, the trumpets echoed through the wilderness, and the people marched in silence. The residents of Jericho watched from the walls, mocking this foolishness. But in Joshua's heart, a battle raged. Lord, will this really work? On the 7th day at dawn, the people marched around the city 7 times. The trumpets pierced the sky, and Joshua cried out, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." The shout of 6 million voices shook the earth like thunder, and in that moment, Jericho's walls collapsed. Dust filled the air. The enemy fortress became rubble. The Israelites stormed the city. But Rahab's household, marked by the scarlet cord, was spared. Joshua stood in the ruins, tears streaming down his face. He bowed low and worshipped, "Lord, your promises never fail." From dry ground at the Jordan to the fallen walls of Jericho, God's presence resounded like the trumpet blast. Through every obedient step, Joshua's victory was not won by sword or strategy, but by faith and obedience. He once feared to take Moses' place, once doubted his own ability, but again and again, he chose to listen to God's voice and let God's plan unfold, even in the face of the impossible. The fall of Jericho was just the beginning. Greater trials awaited in the next city of Canaan. The walls of Jericho had fallen. Joshua and the Israelites rejoiced in victory. God's promise felt within reach. The land of Canaan was opening before them. But the next target, Ai, shattered that joy. AI was nowhere near as grand as Jericho. The scouts returned with confidence. There are only a few. 2,000 or 3,000 men will do. Joshua, full of faith, sent 3,000 warriors. But to his shock, the army of Ai struck with ferocity. Israel fled in defeat. 36 men were killed. Joshua was devastated. He tore his clothes, fell face down before the ark, and remained there until evening. His voice trembled as he cried out, "Lord, why have you brought us here to fail? The Canaanites will destroy us. What will become of your name?" He had taken up Moses' mission. He had seen the miracles at the Jordan and Jericho. But now, failure pierced him like a blade. He whispered, "Lord, was I never worthy to carry this torch?" And God answered, "Israel has sinned. They have taken what was devoted to destruction." That very night, Joshua launched a full investigation. He discovered Achan had disobeyed, hiding plunder from Jericho. Achan was brought before him and confessed, "I saw a beautiful robe, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold. I wanted them, so I took them." Joshua's heart broke, but he obeyed God. Achan and the stolen goods were removed. Judgment was carried out in the valley of Achor. After the sin was purged, God spoke again, "Do not be afraid. I have given Ai into your hands." Joshua reassembled the army, devised an ambush, and feigned retreat. The army of Ai chased them out. Then Joshua raised his javelin. The ambush force rushed in, set Ai ablaze, and conquered the city. Joshua stood over the ruins, staring at the scorched gates. God's promise had come true once again. But the test continued. The people of Gibeon, having heard of Jericho and Ai's fall, devised a trick. They dressed in rags, carried dry and moldy bread, and posed as travelers from a distant land. They came to Joshua seeking a treaty. Without seeking the Lord, Joshua and the elders believed them and made a covenant of peace. 3 days later, the truth was uncovered. The Gibeonites were Canaanites living nearby. The people were angry, but Joshua honored the vow. He made the Gibeonites servants, but spared their lives. Joshua's obedience turned deception into peace. Even in failure and mistakes, God's plan moved forward. Joshua's life reminds us to carry someone else's unfinished mission is to face failure and moments of doubt. But faith and obedience can turn defeat into a new beginning. Have you ever been handed a heavy responsibility and made a mistake that made you question everything? Maybe you feel unworthy. Maybe you believe you've ruined everything. But remember, God never abandons you because of weakness. He values your obedience. Like Joshua, when you return to God after failure, the path to victory will already be waiting beneath your feet. Joshua's life was a journey, from standing in another man's shadow to walking in the light of God's glory. He was once Moses' assistant, standing beside the miracle of the Red Sea, never imagining that one day he would hold that staff of leadership himself. When God called him to lead Israel, to cross the Jordan, to conquer Canaan, his heart was filled with fear. Am I really enough? But from the dry ground of the Jordan, to the ruins of Jericho, to the flames of Ai, he made one choice again and again: obedience. He stumbled in failure, grieved over Achan's hidden sin, and faced blame after being deceived by the Gibeonites. But every time, he returned to God and let faith reignite the torch that led him forward. Joshua wasn't a fearless hero. He was a man who turned the heavy weight of taking the baton into a testimony of victory through obedience. Joshua's story is a mirror, reflecting our own struggles. Have you ever been placed in a role where you carried someone else's unfinished task? Maybe you took over a team and feared you'd never live up to the one before you. Maybe you inherited the expectations of your family, afraid you'd let them down. Or Maybe you stood at a crossroads, convinced you weren't worthy of the path ahead. But hear this, the words God spoke to Joshua. He speaks to you too. Be strong and courageous. I will be with you. The Bible says, God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. Your weakness, your pressure, they are not the end, but the beginning of God's victory through you. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to take the first step of obedience. So if you feel like the weight of responsibility is too much, if you wonder whether you're truly capable, don't back down. Like Joshua, lift your head in the middle of the pressure and see God promise before you. Every step you take is writing a new chapter of victory. We invite you to share in the comments. How have you found strength in the face of pressure? How have you stepped forward when the burden felt too heavy? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Fountain of Hope as we continue to walk through the lives of Bible characters and discover our own stories. In the light of theirs, may you today, like Joshua, light the torch of faith in the face of challenge and walk forward into God's victory.